Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lineup. My name is Lily DeTay. I'm a publicist over here at Soho Press, and I am so excited to introduce you to the authors that we've got joining us for our Read Evil Halloween event today. It's going to be a really great, very scary lineup. Before we get into the books, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to turn you over to our moderator, who's going to be moderating the conversation today. Of course, as always, if you're new to the lineup, thank you for coming. If you're not, I know we have a lot of familiar faces. We do take questions for the authors. If you scroll over to the right side of your screen, there's a little Q&A box, and there's also a chat function. So at any point during this event, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, we're going to get to as many as we can at the end. Feel free to plop them down in there, and we will reach them. There will be one more event before the end of the year. We're picking a date for that right now, but if you want to stay tuned on when that event will be live to register, you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can also stay in touch with Mystery to Me and Soho Press's social media pages and find out when that event is live. We'll be very excited to end the year off with you all. And without further ado, I suppose we also have a gift, like a gift card giveaway that we're doing at the very end of the event. The grand prize this time around is going to be a horror package from Soho Press. So you all have been entered just for RSVPing and for attending the event. Thank you for doing that. We'll announce those winners at the end. And thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our host for the afternoon, Dennis Mahoney, who is the author of Fellow Mortals, a Booklist Top 10 debut, Bellwether, an Indie Next Pick, Ghost Love, and My Heart is Full of Blood, and also Our Winter Monster, which was out with Hell's 100 this year. He lives in Troy, New York with his wife, son, and dog. Dennis, thank you for being here again, moderating this conversation. And I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Lily. Thanks, Soho, and thanks, Mystery to Me. This is great seeing you all again. I have not met Kit before, but I know EK and Stuart. In case you don't, here come some intros. We'll start with EK. EK Sathue is a pseudonym for the author Erin Meyer. A native New Yorker, she wrote her first haunted house story in Mr. Palladino's third grade class and never looked back. Her work has appeared in a variety of publications, including Bustle, Travel and Leisure, Better Homes and Gardens, Literary Hub, Crime Reads, Business Insider, and my favorite, Man Repeller. She lives in Maine with her partner, Benjamin Perry, and their beloved haunted doll, Persephone. Is Persephone still with you, I assume?
She is actually her like little crew of dolls is growing because people now like to get
She's a cult leader.
weird dolls. So I have like a Raggedy Ann next to her. There's like a weird baby that like plastic baby doll that we found. So yeah, it's her little cult is growing. I should have brought her up, but
have you been in touch with the author Ali Malinenko?
No.
Okay, YA author, horror, excellent. Just put out a book about, it's called Broken Dolls, scary doll book. It came out maybe a month ago.
Sounds like it's very up my street.
Yeah, you two should find each other on Instagram. Next up, we have Stuart Neville. He's the king of Belfast noir, according to The Guardian, and the author of 9 novels, including The Ghosts of Belfast, The House of Ashes, and Ratlines, as well as numerous short stories. He's won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and been shortlisted for the Edgar, McCavity, Dillis, Barry, and Anthony Awards, and the CWA Steel Dagger. He lives near Belfast. Stuart, welcome back. I also spoke to you on your last book. Your current book, actually, let me just begin by holding up Erin's book, Youth Juice. And then we'll get to Stuart's Blood Like Ours, a follow-up to the excellent Blood Like Mine. This is out now, right? This has been out like a month? I got it.
No, in the States, it's not out for a couple of weeks yet. I think it's the 28th of October.
Oh, it is still coming. Okay, great. So I've got a scoop on this one. And then we have Kit Burgoyne, which is the horror fiction pen name of Ned Bowman, who was named one of Granta's. Is it Granta or Granta? It's Granta?
Granta.
Granta. 20 Best Young British Novelists in 2013, and is the author of Boxer Beetle, winner of the Goldberg Prize for Outstanding Debut Fiction, The Teleportation Accident, longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and winner of the Somerset Maugham Award, Glow, Madness is Better Than Defeat, It's a great title. And Venomous Lump Sucker, which is also a great title, winner of the Arthur C. Clarke Award. He's written for the New York Times, The Guardian, and the London Review of Books. He lives in London, and The Captive is his first novel as Kit Burgoyne. The Captive cover is here. Soho Press does really great covers. That's 3 for 3.
Yeah.
I like the simplicity of their covers. I always hate a busy cover. I'm always looking for the iconic image, and this is, 1, 2, and 3. Your paperback for Blood Like Mine, Stuart, was really superb. I really liked that one a lot. It was different than the cover.
It was kind of leaning on the Stephen King vibes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will not complain about.
Yeah, right. So let's begin. I'm going to have each of you introduce your books and just tell us a little bit about each of those titles. Let's begin with EK. Tell us about Youth Juice, please.
Yeah, so Youth Juice is a horror satire about the beauty industry. It's about a young woman named Sophia. She's about to turn 30. She's very aimless in her life, and she gets this job at a very trendy beauty company called Hebe, which is named after the Greek goddess of youth. And she just immediately gets sucked into the culture there and finds out that they have found a curiously effective anti-aging ingredient.
Now, that book came out, is it almost 2 years now? It's about at least a year and a half.
It was June 2024. So I guess, a year and a half.
Okay, yeah, a year and a half. All right. Because the paperback threw me off. The question I had for you, because we've done a lot of events together at this point. We did a mini tour in the spring, and we've done a couple of virtual events together. It's hard for me to ask you the same questions again, because you must be bored senseless. And I'm just trying to activate a new way. And I got thinking about the life of a book and how it really needs this phase where it goes out into the world and it starts standing on its own 2 feet. You've sent your organism out and it's starting to grow and change. And I'm wondering, in the course of the 18 months since Youth Juice has come out, hearing reader feedback and just actually watching it live and breathe in the world, has your opinion of it changed? Like, do you feel differently? Especially because you probably finished writing it, 2.5 years ago with the publication cycle and everything?
Yeah, I think I finished it 2023. That was like the final version. And I've been working on it since I think 2020. And now I've been talking about it for almost 2 years since it's been finished. So yeah, that's a really good question. I kind of feel like I like it even more, which is like a unexpected, maybe. I don't know. I like when I haven't read an excerpt for an event or whatever for a while and I have to open it up again. I'm like, funny. I'm very pleased with certain parts of it. I think it's also taken on kind of an interesting life because the movie The Substance came out not that long after the hardcover came out. And so I kind of feel like there's been such an ongoing conversation about the beauty industry, how toxic it is. And I think that has been so cool to kind of just see it continue to find readers. So yeah, it's really wild and very cool that it's been out for 18 months and people still tag me in posts and send me messages. And I think there have been some messages that have been so unexpectedly heartfelt too, which is always kind of lovely and surprising since it's kind of a vicious satire with some really gross scenes. And the fact that, I'll get these really sweet messages from people about how it made them feel. And I got there was a loud bang outside. I got a really lovely message from a teenage reader who was just it inspired my work, my art so much. And I've been drawing and doing all this cool stuff. And that's been so lovely. So I think I've just been really thinking about the layers involved and how scenes that I wrote thinking they were very mean or viciously satirical might feel different for some people. And I always think about my mom in particular when she first read the book was felt so bad for Sophia, the main character, which I think is such a funny interpretation. It's most people kind of hate her, even if they like her. So it's just always like so interesting to hear what everyone takes away from a book, you know?
Mhm. Great answer. And passing over to Stuart, you have an interesting version of this where I'm sorry, forgive me for not knowing your crime writing books well, but this the first time you've written a series?
No, my Belfast set books were all part of a kind of
Oh,
loose
shoot. That
series.
was actually in your bio. I apologize.
That's
I've been
right.
trying to keep up with horror. I don't read much crime. Okay, so
Um,
this not your first series. I, I'll ask the question either way then. What I was going to ask was, do you find that your approach to books or your views of books alter as the story progresses in a public sphere? Like you actually get to continue the story after the dialogue has begun.
um, yeah, I mean, I've never really considered myself a series writer in the same way they say Lee Child or Ian Rankin or John Connolly or somebody is, that revisits the same character over and over again. Um, the Belfast books were a loose series, and they might different characters would go to the foreground or go to the background, nearly book by book. Um, but yeah, I mean, I certainly found, particularly with the first book, The Ghost of Belfast, that kind of took on a life of its own once it was out in the world. I think I'd be more ready for that as the books have gone on.
Hmm.
And there's definitely that feeling that once the book's published, it's not mine anymore.
Right.
If that makes sense. And I had the experience, I can talk about this now with Blood Like Mine, where we were developing a script, a screenplay based on it with a producer, and I'd worked with a couple of screenwriters. I basically did it first drafts and I did some rewrites on it. And having to come back to the same story, but from somebody else's perspective of having pulled it apart and put it back together again
Hmm.
was quite an experience as well. All of a sudden, having to um, trying to figure out which parts of the book were important to somebody else that
Hmm.
weren't important to me, and vice versa. So having to take a more detached approach to the story was certainly interesting, and unfortunately it fizzled out, didn't go anywhere. But yeah, you get to look at your own writing from a very different perspective when another writer comes along and
Right.
has a go at it.
And does it alter your trajectory for future books? I, I find like even when I'm not writing a series, the reactions that I will get from readers to whatever I wrote last does sort of kick me into paying maybe more attention to strengths I had or more often shortcomings I had on the last book. And it's like, how can I up that? How can I improve that? So when you're writing literally a sequel to Blood Like Mine, were you getting reader feedback where you're like, oh God, that's so interesting, for example, that somebody clapped onto that part of it, or oh geez, that was a missed opportunity that I'm hearing about now, I can now rectify that in the future books?
Um, I think I actually had a conversation with my editor Juliet about this not that long ago. I think one of the things I've come to realize over the last probably since COVID, I think is if I was to say I had one strength in my books, it's that they have a bit of emotional heft. Um, and I think with Blood Like Mine, even going into it, I was conscious of that. Not trying to be kind of push buttons with it at the same time, but I think being more aware of that readers are more interested in the characters than they are in the gore or the big
Yeah.
scares. It's more about the characters and their emotional journey more than anything else, and then carrying that through the second book. Um, and now the third book, which I'm currently working on.
Excellent. Yeah, I know Stephen King was quoted somewhat, not quoted, I think he tweeted at somebody or something early this year saying exactly what you did. Some young writer was saying, like, how do I begin writing horror novels? And Stephen, of all people, happens to notice this tweet out of nowhere and answers it. And his answer was write characters that people love. Like, that's rule one. You've got to actually give a crap about the characters and forget all the other stuff. It was interesting to hear him say that. He's written so many books that actually have characters you remember, which is
Yeah.
sometimes not the case in genre or horror books. Um, you can't always name the character in a horror book. You remember the creature, you remember the plot. I certainly remember your characters. The mother-daughter relationship is so strong in those. And, I mean, that's clearly the centerpiece of both of those books. So,
And I think
oh yeah, no, go on, please.
oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I think the thing about all good horror is that it should be personal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's a monster or whether it's a natural disaster, whatever it is. I think the story at the end of the day has to be personal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all. Sorry.
So, Kit, I'm going to actually almost begin a new thread that I will hit the other two authors with. You're coming to horror. This is your first horror novel, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Stuart's on number two. I think all four of us began not writing horror. Like my first two and a half books say, my first two books were definitively not horror. My third one was starting to get adjacent, and then I went all the way in. I'm interested in the path of, in your case, you were writing literary fiction. Was it exclusively? I mean, would you call it literary fiction, which is just that catch-all?
Yeah, I mean, I've
genre?
published some short stories in science fiction magazines, stuff like that. But yeah, basically literary fiction. Yeah.
But you were writing sci-fi. I apologize. I was
I
thinking it was more literary.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this is your first horror, so you've shifted into a potentially different audience for the first time. How's that experience been for you so far? In terms of having a different kind of waiting audience and not being sure what to expect. Like it was new for me to really step into horror in the last year and see there was this whole world that was very much waiting for this kind of literature to come out.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna turn my lights. Up. Yeah, I still feel not particularly well oriented in the genre, partly because when we were submitting the book, I was asked to come up with comps, meaning what are the successful books that this is similar to. And, I'm not saying like my book is some incredibly singular and unique work of the rogue imagination, but we really struggled to come up with any comps. Like we just couldn't really find any other novels that, at least in commercial terms, it kind of cleanly resembles. So
I had this. I can see what you mean because I just read it and I can't think of a horror novel. It's like I got thinking about the new P.T. Anderson movie when I was reading it.
It is very similar to the new PTA film, which obviously I hadn't seen when I wrote it, but yeah, totally.
Right.
I mean, part of the reason I wrote it was like I felt like 1970s leftist guerrillas are due to come back in the culture, so I kind of knew that was going to happen. But yeah, so from the very beginning, I've sort of felt like this is like coming in at a weird angle to the horror genre and not knowing if horror readers are gonna greet that as something refreshing or greet it as having like slightly misunderstood what the like assignment is, as people say now. And also the book only came out last week, so I've done one event for it, and that wasn't a like horror oriented event. So I actually don't really feel like I've had any contact yet at all with this new audience that I'm attempting to.
Those events I found are so hard when you don't think you don't have the common language. Like I've done a bunch of horror events, and everybody in the room is more or less on the same page, and will get the jokes and get the references, and they've probably read the same stuff and grew up on the same movies. And then you do like a general radio interview, and in my head, I'm just thinking 99% of the listeners right now do not care about horror. And part of me feels like I need to be the prophet in the wilderness and try to like lure them in. And I've kind of given up on that. But it's tough. Like you do those events where it's not primarily horror. Yeah, you feel like you're talking to the alien audience, and you're not really sure what they want from you. They're not hostile, but they could be.
Yeah, I mean, it was only a 5-minute reading, so The problem was more like trying to give a very, very fast explanation of why I'd been introduced by one name, but my book had a different name on
Oh,
the
right.
cover.
Yeah. So going back to EK, your path was also something similar. You did not begin by writing horror. You wrote a lot of different things over the years. Um, what do you suppose tipped you? Was it the nature of the story that occurred to you, or was it sort of a conscious effort to get into that genre? Like you wanted to try it?
Yeah, I think so. I was always a horror like and just dark fiction person, sort of like in my core. Like even from by the time I was a kid, I was very drawn to it. And I have that little anecdote about writing a haunted house story when I was in third grade. And I just like somewhere along the way, kind of like think I decided that I needed to write like general fiction, whatever that means. And and then also I have been working in media for like a decade. So I write a lot of like just kind of like service journalism about products. And I think that I really, when I was, first of all, working as a beauty editor, which is like where this idea for Youth Juice came from, struck by like the kind of cognitive dissonance of like being kind of like a little weirdo who likes very dark things and going to these events where everyone's like celebrating a moisturizer. And I just thought it would be such a fun combination. And at the time, you know, now we're kind of in a little bit of a wave of like a lot of books and movies addressing this industry and like aging and through horror. But at the time that I started writing it, that was not really the case. And I think I just slowly, as I was working on the book, like when it started, it was definitely satire. It was definitely had a similar tone, but like it was kind of missing a lot of the like gross parts. And I think just as I was like editing, and kind of like refining the draft, I was just like, this needs something to really like make it stand out, I think, was part of it, where I was like, I need to just be like kind of nasty, I think. And I love that. That's like a theme that I really enjoy, is like beauty and nastiness kind of like mixing and overlapping. And so I just found it like so fun. And then I was just really taken with like, oh, this is a genre that I've always known that I was interested in, that I always really liked, but I never really considered like myself a horror author. But then once I claimed that title for myself, it felt like very right. And I think one of the things I really love about it is it's very broad and varied. And like, I kind of think that there's like something for everyone in horror. And that's what I love about it. And I think the readers are so passionate. Like there's such a cool community around it. And all the horror themed events I've done have just been so fun. Like the authors are so fun. The readers are so engaged. And I don't know, there's a lot of pessimism about writing and the publishing industry, which I totally understand why, but like I kind of feel the opposite in the little horror pocket. Like everyone seems like they're having a great time and they want more, which is really fun.
And it's a very supportive community. Like Obama picked The Buffalo Hunter as one of his summer books this year, and you could kind of hear everybody in the horror community high fiving. Like one of us made it in, and it was the right one. It was good. Going to Stuart, your entrance into horror. So sometimes I'm asked these questions, especially when it's one of those like interviews where it's not a horror person asking me these questions, and they'll say like, did you really need to write a relationship book that had a snow monster in it? Like, if you were so interested in the couple, why not write a good old-fashioned literary novel about the couple? My witty comeback that I didn't have at the time was like, well, couldn't you have written Hamlet without an actual ghost showing up? And it's like, yes, you can, but the spirit moved Will Shakespeare to put that actual ghost in. The spirit moved you to put the vampires in, a word that you do not use in either of the books. I noticed you held to it in the second book. When you are writing a story that's so intensely about a mother and a daughter's relationship. And in some ways, it really jumped out at me in the second book how it's a story of loyalties in general. You've got brothers that end up being extremely loyal. You've got the two FBI agents that are extremely loyal to one another, with the complicated twist I will not mention in the second book. You've got these little groups fighting for their terrain and for their own loyal purposes. At what point do you suppose you really thought like you need to add a horror element felt right? Like at what point did you drift towards that, do you suppose?
Well, the vampire thing was there from inception.
Okay.
I should explain, if those that haven't read the first book. I mean, when the first book initially came out, we didn't mention the V word anywhere in the cover, and we kind of talked around it because it's, spoiler now, a bit of a twist halfway through the first book, but we're not being so coy about it now. The second book's here. But it was always a vampire story. It came about because there were a couple of different inspirations for it. I'd always loved Let the Right One In, both the novel and the Swedish movie.
Yeah.
But I was always fascinated by the guy who looks after Ellie.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, in the book and the film sort of hint that it's kind of a darker motivation he has for being there, but you could read it as him being a father as well. And I always thought, what's his deal? What's the bond between them? I mean, it hints at being something quite dark, but so I was always fascinated by that idea of I guess the word familiar is kind of taking on a comedy thing because of what we do in the shadows, but somebody who helps somebody with that affliction. But I also then, when Midnight Mass came out a few years back, the McFlanagan series.
I still haven't seen that. Is it really good?
Oh, you have to watch it. It's really good. I think
yeah.
I've watched it 3 times. My daughter's besotted with it as well. But I remember that was the thing that sort of pushed me down the path of actually, maybe I should write a vampire novel. So then it was looking at that relationship then from Let the Right One In that made me think, okay, that's the path I want to go down with this. So the two were never a separate thing. It was always the vampire and the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact, I think almost every book I've done since about the maybe third or fourth book has involved parenthood in some way or other, which coincides with me and my wife having kids. So there's that theme of parenthood and family has been there for I think every book since. Certainly since the maybe the third or fourth novel that I'd written. So it all just naturally fit in there. There wasn't a conscious decision of we'll take this ingredient and that ingredient and smush them together. The story was always the story.
Cool.
And the characters were always there from day one.
Yeah, that's probably Shakespeare too. Just of course they'll use a ghost and on with it. Yeah. Kit, in terms of real world connections, so you've got a story. I got to talk about the Wolfsaw group a little bit. This is the family that's the problem in the book. I won't reveal a whole lot, but you're telling the story of this shadow group that has an incredible amount of power in the world that the characters don't usually know about. You've got this terrific little bit in the beginning where you say like no one notices the brand maker of the manhole covers that are everywhere. You walk over them every day, you see them every day, but you have no idea like Evil Company makes them or whatever. It could say anything. You have no idea there's like a river of money flowing behind these things. We have a company here, I don't know if they're overseas, probably. It's called Uline or Uline. They've got like a 900-page printed catalog and they sell everything. And there are rivers of crazy money somewhere in the background. Like every toilet paper dispenser you've ever seen, every office supply chain you've ever seen, it all comes from this one warehouse. So when you're telling the story of that kind of group, were you inspired by anyone in particular? You don't necessarily need to name it, but was there a point where you were really thinking like that thing can almost only be properly represented as a satanic conspiracy?
the inspiration for that was in the later Omen films, which I haven't actually rewatched since I was a teenager, but I still have a dim memory of them. Damien, when he wants to come to power over the whole planet, he kind of starts off doing it by like secular political means. Like it involves like big corporations and the UN and stuff, in the way that some people interpreting the Book of Revelations have said,
Mm.
oh, the Antichrist is going to give us all barcodes and chips under our skin and stuff like that. So I wanted to take that angle, and I thought, okay, so if you were trying to start your campaign for world domination in a kind of stealthy but completely all permeating way, you'd want to make a lot of money in a way that gave you a kind of foothold in the lives of tens of millions of people, or ideally everyone in the country. And so I immediately thought of, in the UK, we have these public outsourcing companies like G4S, which I think also operates in the US, and Serco and Capita. And, it used to be that like we felt like the government here had the competence to get things done, and we just no longer do. So now, anytime there's like a new task that has to be accomplished, they contract one of these three companies to do it. But all of these three companies have these absolutely abject track records of profiteering and incompetence and negligence that has killed people and so on. But they still just carry on getting these contracts because there isn't anyone else. Like, no one could just start a company that's as big and has as many government connections and stuff like that. So one of those just felt like the perfect kind of cover for this much more supernatural thing. I will say, like, I would love, I don't actually really know that much about these companies. Like, I've never talked to anyone who worked at one or anything. I don't think that the novel functions as like a forensic takedown of these
No.
companies and the role they play in British life. I would still love someone to write that novel or make that TV series or whatever, but just in a fairly shallow way, as like, what is the Damien from The Omen of 2025 in the UK? How is he making his money? I feel like ideally he'd be owning one of those companies.
Yeah. I always think about the little startup at the beginning of the .com business that only sold books because they were non-perishable and cheap. And people were laughing when the owner of that company said, eventually I'm going to be a grocery store of literally everything. And everyone will buy everything from me forever. Like, oh, that's very cute, Jeff. And then lo and behold, here we are. I forgot, bad host. I started with EK describing Youth Juice, but I did not get the two of you guys to just give me the quick pitch of each of your books. And again, as we're trying to encourage readers to check these out, I would like to go back and do that. Stuart, could you just give us a pitch for the Blood-like series?
Yeah, Blood Like Ours is the sequel to Blood Like Mine. There's a third part coming. If anyone wants to take a guess in the comments what the title of that might be. The Blood Like Ours picks up sort of days after the end of Blood Like Mine. I don't want to be too spoilery, but Rebecca, the mother in the relationship, finds herself alone and fundamentally changed. And also knowing that her daughter is out somewhere in the wilds, lost. At the same time, Moonflower, her daughter, is wandering the mountains above El Paso with a pack of dogs, just trying to survive. And but she's tracked down by two brothers, Jacob and Willard Hendry, who are like Moonflower, have very specific dietary needs, and they offer to take her and keep her safe. But there's a moment in the first book, there's a character called the nurse who warns Moonflower that most people like Moonflower didn't choose to be what they are, and they're just trying to get by and doing as little harm as possible. But there are some out there who take pleasure in being what they are and enjoy the cruelty of it. And Jacob and Willard are just two such people. And so they take Moonflower with them, and then Rebecca has to try and track them down.
Great. And Kit?
Yeah, the pitch for mine, The Captive, is basically, what if Rosemary from Rosemary's Baby was Patty Hearst? So it's about this wealthy heiress to, well, one of those companies I was just talking about, who gets kidnapped by this left-wing guerrilla group. And then they find out that she's pregnant with, we've been saying the Antichrist in marketing terms, but actually I don't really think of it as the Antichrist, in the classic, like, biblical Satan sense. It's not really meant to be in that world, but useful shorthand, she's pregnant with the Antichrist. And then she has the baby, and she has to decide whether to kind of join with these guerrillas and fight back against her parents, who have forced her to bear this baby. And actually delivering this pitch to people has made me realize, like, not everyone knows who Patty Hearst is. It's too long a story to relate, but, like, it's absolutely fascinating. So definitely Wikipedia Patty Hearst if you've never heard of Patty Hearst before. It's like one of the most fascinating things to have happened in American life in the 20th century, in my opinion.
And all three books are awesome. Anybody paying attention right now, I really loved all three. I'm a slow reader as a rule, and I mowed through all three of yours. Also, shout out to Soho Press typeface design, which is definitely favoring the middle-aged eyeballs. There's lots of nice space on the page. It's not all crammed in. It's always a pleasure to read one of those books when I get them. More general question for each of you, and then I think we're going to start running out of time. Running out of time in terms of if anybody on the side here has questions, please ask. And Lily from Soho will be gathering those questions. If you want to ask the authors anything, we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes to do that, starting in about 8 to 10 minutes or so. General question. The art that has affected each of you most personally in your life. And by art, I mean like almost literally anything, but I guess we'll stick to story, either books or movies or TV shows. What do you suppose it was about them? Like, if you can picture one or two in your head, why was it most important to you? Do you feel like do you lean more towards characters that are memorable, or ideas that are memorable? And I guess as a corollary there, do you tend to lean a little more commercial or a little more kind of eccentric indie or arty? Anybody raise their hand gets to go first. If not, I'm picking someone at random.
Do you mean affected as in, like, emotionally affected, moved, or
Yeah.
affected as in, like,
Yeah.
changed the course of life?
I would say, like, just whatever hit you personally. Like, I can think of, just foundational works when I was coming up that I just thought, like, that art really mattered to me. And those were the ones that shaped me in some way, or it thrilled me. They're my favorites, but in a really deep way. Aaron, I'm going to start with you and just say, like, I know you like David Lynch.
Yeah, that was the first
when we
thing.
met, you had the David Lynch bag on you.
Yes.
You spotted my Twin Peaks pin, so, like, the two of us were okay.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought. But then I was like, I should think of some books. But
No, anything goes. I mean, if you tell me it was like the pop album you grew up with, like, that's a valid answer. Anything that just sparked something in terms of who you are as an artist or a person. Or just, like, goddamn, you just love it. I don't know. I just got back into hair metal from the 80s, and I'm just embracing it.
Yeah, I think I love anything that feels a little weird and surreal. So, like, even things that, even more like straightforward literary fiction, I guess, that kind of like lit me up when I was younger. Like The Virgin Suicides was one of my favorite books as a teenager. And it was like when I read that, I was just kind of like, I didn't know you could like do that. Like I didn't know you could write such a like weird, dark character, like study of this, you know, town and this family. And I think that I love that like tension between the real world and kind of like something else, which I think is what I really love about David Lynch too. Like most of my favorite, I mean, I love all of the things that he's done that I've seen, but I really love like Blue Velvet, Fire Walk with Me, like the things that feel part tethered very much in like our reality, but then they go wildly off in these sort of metaphysical, like surreal directions. That's just something that I really, really love. And then, I mean, Shirley Jackson is also she's probably my favorite author of all time. And I think it was like a similar experience when I read The Lottery for the first time, where I was just like, this is just like wild. It's just like broke my brain. And it's always interesting, I think, about her because I read like the short story collection that The Lottery was in as like a teenager. And I feel like aside from that story, I kind of like didn't really get most of the other stories because like a lot of her stuff is a little bit more like bizarre and like in a way where you can't always pin down like what exactly, like though I think it might be the first story in the collection. There's one where it's like this woman is waiting for her fiance to like show up for her wedding.
The demon lover stories. I think that demon lover is in a few of hers, right?
Yeah, and it's so good. And it's just like he's like not showing up and she's trying to find him and it just like becomes horror at some point. Like it just kind of slips in. Yeah.
I think when she's like wandering through the city, if I'm thinking of the same one, like really like the environment starts to bend around here and you're like, where the hell am I now?
Yes. And I think that's
really sneaky.
Yeah. Really like that tension between reality and, you know, something else is very exciting to me. And I definitely think my taste leans more like arty, if you couldn't tell based on those. But I love that, like, I really love work that, like, maybe it is like super weird or super literary, but it uses a lot of that, like, genre, kind of like those, like, tropes and stuff almost to, like, ground it in something. And then it just kind of goes off in its own direction.
Right. And how about either of you guys?
It's funny. A friend of mine called Joanna Biggs just wrote this great book called A Life of One's Own, which is about 9 fiction writers that she feels have really like contributed to her life when she was like trying to kind of plot her course in life. And I was reading it thinking, man, I definitely don't have 9 writers. 9 is so many. It's so rare to find even one that you have a real connection with. But I think the one that has had the biggest impact on my life is one that you definitely wouldn't find in like a respectable collection of literary essays. It's this Australian science fiction writer called Greg Egan, who is one of those real like kind of if you know, you know type writers. He's extremely, I mean, he's tough going a lot of the time. He writes a lot about like kind of non-Euclidean physics, stuff like that. And you think, okay, how has that shaped me emotionally? But he also writes a huge amount about like consciousness and identity and like personhood in these deeply philosophical ways. And he was a big part of the reason I ended up studying philosophy as an undergraduate. And I think he has shaped my whole thinking about life because I read him when I was, 13 or 14 for the first time. And his work is a lot about like questioning very basic kind of metaphysical premises about what being alive is. And like, you know, he's a good writer. I'm not holding him up as like kind of one of the great prose stylists or anything, but the ideas in there, yeah, had such an impact on me that weirdly it is this Australian sci-fi writer who has never been photographed and never got famous, who probably is like the biggest impact on my life.
That's great. Can you give me the name one more time?
Oh yeah,
I
it's
don't have a pen.
Greg Egan,
Egan.
Egan.
Oh, okay. Actually, my son has a friend named Egan, so I'll remember that. That's a great answer. I love that kind of thing. Again, and those things that hit you when you're in that age. I mean, I think they've talked about like what happens to the brain from then to about 24, and you just it's developmentally wiring differently. I think that's why we're all prone to
Yeah.
nostalgia for those years. Um, yeah, you get hit with the right thing at 13. My God, like that will shift. How about you, Stuart? You got anything that you feel? And it doesn't have to be a writer or a book. It can just, it could be music or something that tipped you as a teenager or in your 20s.
Um, I can think of a bunch of things, kind of touchstones over the years, just certain bits of culture that hit me at an exact moment. But the earliest I can remember, and this is going to sound like a very basic answer, but in 1978, I'd have been six, and I come from a small town called Armagh, which had one little flea pit cinema called the Ritz. And my mum took me one evening, and it was the kind of cinema that had the old velvet fold down chairs and stuff, and you could see the
Right.
projector beam because of the cigarette smoke going through it, and it stank. And but remember, I didn't know what I was going to see, but it turned out to be Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
And being a kid from Northern Ireland, where there was this kind of low-level civil war going on at the same time, and there were all soldiers on the streets, and you couldn't do anything or go anywhere, and everything closed at 6 o'clock. All of a sudden, this is like the second coming of Jesus, to see this movie, and so that in itself triggered just a love of movies in general, and that carried through. I then, as a kid, I one of the things I loved was BBC Two. On a Friday or Saturday night would have a horror double bill. And they'd always have a Universal monster movie, so there'd be like Bride of Frankenstein or something like that first, and then there'd be a
Yeah.
Hammer horror movie. So it'd be
Oh,
one of those really kind
yeah.
of lurid, bright red blood and lots of cleavage kind of
Yeah.
films on
Lots of
afterwards. And you
Christopher
probably have
Lee.
Peter Cushing. Yeah. So there's that. But then
Oh,
also,
so
I remember being around
you've actually got
89.
You've got Peter Cushing twice now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because you
I
had Star
remember.
Wars and Hammer movie. He was all over your childhood.
Indeed. When I was 8 or 9 and getting into things like Billy Wilder, I remember being like 9 years old and knowing who Billy Wilder was and watching documentaries about him and stuff. Just having this whole sort of spread of storytelling, but at the same time reading as well. I read, fell in love with a series of books called The Adventure Books by Willard Price. They were ridiculous stories about these brothers who go and get samples for the Farther Zoo. Sort of like Arctic Adventure and Congo Adventure and this kind of thing. And they're
Yeah.
probably terribly racist. They're written in the 1950s, so I'd hate to go back to them now and discover that they're incredibly problematic, more than likely.
Yeah.
And
The
then
Hardy Boy
reading, I
books
think,
have some issues.
yeah, they're all of
I,
that. They're all of that kind of vein. Probably that's around that
yeah.
same time as well.
But that had some
Um,
occasionally racist stuff that they were like, oh shit, let's get rid of that line.
yeah, it's kind of stuff that goes over your head when you're 7.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, then reading The Shining when I was 12 or 13,
Uh,
and that was a big lightning bolt. Um, and that put me on that path for a long time. Then American Tabloid by James Ellroy, reading that,
mhm.
and it was the first crime novel that made me kind of sort of step back and go, "Wow, that's what you can do in this genre."
Yeah.
A book called Queen Pin by Megan Abbott was the first book of hers that I read that actually made me. And it was already published at the time, and my first book had already been out. But I remember reading it and thinking, I have to write better. That
Mhm.
she's writing books so exquisitely written. I have to try harder. Um, and so everything she did, she made the beautiful book. The End of Everything is a beautiful book by her. Again, one of those writers that feels like her voice is just like whispering in your ear, kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so aside from the music thing, as you can see, all this stuff behind me, that there might have been a bit of Van Halen somewhere in the mix. Um, aside from music, yeah, there are those kind of milestones through the years you can pinpoint. That particular thing had an effect that shifted the way I look at things.
If I could just quickly share one of mine, riffing on yours, we must be about the same age because I was 6 in 1980, and I had missed A New Hope because I'd have been 3, I think, when that came out. So my parents bring me to Empire Strikes Back when I'm 6. I have not seen the first movie, so it's pre-VCR, and it hadn't been re-released recently. So I get splashed into that thing. And as a 6-year-old boy, to get to that, at the time, shocking twist that Vader's Luke's dad, you're like, that's his father, and Luke is kind of like that. And then the good guys lose, and it ends on this dark, dark note that people have been trying to imitate ever since. And between the ages of 6 and 9, it feels like a million years. Like so much happens in your development and your growth. And that's how long we all had to wait for the sequel to come out. So this is like a prime action figure era. So like I've got 3 whole years of dreaming of what Return of the Jedi will be. And that must have changed the way my brain worked with regard to thinking about story. Like I had to make up the imagination version of where that story went. Basically get hit with a cliffhanger of all cliffhangers at 6. It's just an incredible thing.
There's 2 things there to pick on. And I tell my kids about this, and I don't know if they believe me or not. Like I saw Star Wars in the cinema in 1978. VCRs weren't a common thing in homes, and at least for 4 years. And so I think it was 1982 before Star Wars. Then New Hope was on television. Yeah. So I had to wait 4 years for my favorite movie. 4 years to get to see it again for the second time, and my kids couldn't wait 4 minutes.
No, I know.
These days. But the other thing is, the thing that actually one of the things really got me into reading in a big way was that the cinema in my hometown closed down, and there weren't any VCRs. I think it closed down in 1980. Closed down before The Empire Strikes Back came out. So I couldn't see any movies. My parents didn't have a car. I couldn't go anywhere. So the thing that kept me in the movies was reading novelizations, and I still have a collection here. I look up. I've got the Raiders of the Lost Ark novelization. I've got Poltergeist. I've got, and that's how I consumed movies, was actually through novelizations. And there were
I have the Poltergeist one.
It's really good. It's James Caan.
I haven't read it yet. My favorite one is I have a novelization of Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. Oh, right. Somebody wrote the novel version of that one. I got to read
the Poltergeist one. The Poltergeist one's really good. James Caan wrote that one.
Oh no, shoot! I gave that one away. I gave that one to Emily, who wrote Horror for Weenies, because she was talking about how Poltergeist marked her, and that was her beginning. And then she was too scared of horror movies until she started reading, and then she got into the horror movies afterwards. So I think that's all we've got for now, unless has anybody asked questions yet? I encourage anyone that's got any kind of question for any of the authors, pop in on the side over there. Anything goes. If not, I have another question in the can that I can ask, and we can wrap it up that way. Do you have any, Lily?
I don't think we have any new ones. We talked about inspiration.
Yeah.
If you've got one more, Dennis, go for it.
Sure. Just a general one. I wanted to talk about Halloween plans, which is especially interesting for me because I'm not really sure what Halloween is like overseas. So let's begin with Aaron, with EK, and tell me, do you have Halloween plans? Do you tend to do anything? And what was your Halloween childhood like growing up?
I feel like my Halloweens were so fun as a kid, and like weirdly, I don't like to dress up as an adult. Like, I think I'm just too like lazy. Like people get really into it, and I'm like, I'm like the horror person. I should be like dressing up. But I also feel like I go through a weird phase every October where like it's like the one time I don't care as much about watching real horror, and instead I watch like cute, spooky like 90s movies. So I've already done like Practical Magic and Casper, so I'm sure like some other ones are on the horizon. But I honestly like my town has like this one street that people like all the kids kind of trick or treat on. So it's like very fun to just kind of walk down it at night and like see them all in their little outfits. And then we are having a Halloween party actually, but I think it's going to be before the actual day of Halloween. So maybe I will have to figure out a costume. I don't know. Sometimes I'll just wear like a spooky t-shirt and I'll be like, I don't know, me all year.
Yeah, in America, it's very heavily dependent on the neighborhood. I grew up in your classic Spielbergian vibe suburbs, and like it was the '80s, and that was like maximal trick or treat time. And then I think we all got scared because there were the rumors of the razor blades and apples and the creepy people in vans and I specifically remember like, they used to bring the candy to the local hospital if you wanted it x-rayed before you ate it. Almost none of that was founded on reality. Like there weren't kids eating pins in the apples on a regular basis or anything. Then it transitioned into this adult holiday. And now it's like, I know it's right behind Christmas in terms of making money every year. What people spend on the holiday, like we're just losing. I do think Stuart is coming back shortly. He had a signal issue. I have read a lot about Halloween. What is London Halloween currently like? You're in London, Kit?
Yeah, I mean, one feels slightly ambivalent about it because, British culture is so dominated by American culture. Like, we didn't used to have high school proms here, but like now the kids will go to proms because like just not for any reason except that everyone's been watching American TV for decades. So we just thing by thing we adopt American stuff regardless of whether it has any relevance to us. And to us, I think for people of my parents' generation, they see the idea of kids trick-or-treating as Halloween as just like imitating Americans. And I do hate the fact that so much of our culture is borrowed from American culture. But on the other hand, obviously it is very cute seeing kids dressed up as monsters, and it is fun to go to a Halloween party. So I will, with some reservations, allow it into our lives. And I mean, I've been in New York on Halloween, and it's really fun going on the subway, and it is increasingly the same here. It is fun going on the underground and seeing everyone in their costumes. But it's not like what we don't really have is in America you walk past someone's house and they've spent like thousands of dollars on set dressing and they have like animatronics and like it's basic. They've built like a tiny theme park. Like this is something I am only aware of through media because we don't, thank God, have that here yet. But it's probably only a matter of time.
Right, probably. If some moderator can let Stuart back in, he had to reboot his system, and now he needs an invite in. So, if either of the moderators can let Stuart in for this final answer, he's back. Wait, he's almost back. He's saying he needs someone to add him back to the stage.
I am working on getting Stuart back in. He's been invited, so hopefully he is able to see it in just a second.
Okay.
He should be
able to. Back. I know he's a dad, so I want to ask. Yeah. I want to ask what's going on at his place.
No worries. We'll get him back in.
Okay. Lily, what are you doing for Halloween? Or actually, let me ask you, or Soho, because it's a Friday, right? So are you going to be in the office?
I think it is a Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know what my plan is yet. I do live in a neighborhood, Kit, where people really do be pulling out all the stops with the animatronics. So I do enjoy walking my dog through the crazy decorated Halloween houses. But I'm not sure. I'm gonna follow my heart. We'll see what happens. Find a funny costume or something.
Follow you Halloween. That's correct. It's a good answer.
I wanted to come in quick until Stuart gets in and ask the question that everybody hates about what everybody is looking forward to or working on next, including you, Dennis?
I'm just waiting to hear back from my agent on my new finished book. So hopefully it'll be in Soho's hands soon. My agent has a ton of clients, and she loves focusing on one at a time, which is great when it's your turn. I must have just gotten back in the queue a little bit. So she's going to get to it soon. I've had some early reads. I've written a demon novel that I think is a little different than other demon novels I've read, in which you get to know the demon as a full character. It's not, you're always contending with The Exorcist or something like when you write a demon novel. And I think a lot of people's answer to that is to try to make it more intense or somehow more ancient and mysterious. And I was interested in the idea of what if a demon was just sort of like us, didn't know why he was here, didn't know what the purpose of life was, and was pretty ticked off at people for having bodies. He's a have-not, and he hates that people don't appreciate their bodily existence. He's fighting a middle-aged demon hunter named Claire, who's my favorite character that I've ever written. I knew I needed to. Hey, Stuart's back. I knew I needed to give her a full showcase. So it's the two of them battling each other, kind of Russian doll versus Moriarty. So Stuart, the Halloween question, and you have kids. I'm just wondering, is there a celebration in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I mean, it's sorry, I should explain. My sound went off and I had to duck out and back in again. Yeah, as Kit was saying, that kind of American trick or treat thing has kind of crept in here over in recent years. Like when I was a kid, it was all trick. There was no treat. We used to go around the neighborhood just being horrible to people, egging houses, that kind of thing. But my kids are kind of at the age now where they're both kind of sullen teenagers now, so they're a bit less into that. They'll still take the sweets, the candy, if we give it to them, but yeah, they're less keen on the festivity aspect of it. And but we will be having my daughter's a little bit. She's 14 now, so getting into horror movies. We'll probably have a few movie marathons, I think, over the course of the month.
And the other authors, what are you working on next? That's what we were just getting into when you were missing. Let's start with you, Stuart, since you're already talking. You said you're working on number 3, right? How far along are you on that? Can you hear me, Stuart? Nope, he might be gone again. Kit, what are you working on next?
Well, I have nearly finished my next Kit Burgoyne. No, wait, no, the opposite of that. I've nearly finished my next Ned Bowman novel, which I hope will come out maybe the year after next or something. And it's not a horror novel at all, but I think it has, in common with this, it's kind of about like trying to fight when you feel despair about fighting back against the power structures that are oppressing you. Like, what means might you turn to, and what price might you pay for turning to those things?
We're having a lot of tech issues.
Yeah, my sound disappeared again, but I'm back now.
I think I'm echoing as well.
Some settings.
It's demonic activity for sure. This is the Woolsaw group deciding that we're done talking today. Maybe we should wrap it up. There is an incredible echo we can't seem to solve.
Oh, so that's probably my fault. Hang on.
Thank you, Dennis, for moderating. The demons will continue for just a moment longer as I announce the gift card winners for today's event. Again, thank you all for joining. You have been entered to win a Mystery to Me gift card just truly by RSVPing. So I'm going to announce the names, and then we will email you separately right after this event to let you know how to redeem your gift card if you have won. So thank you for being here. Number 1 gift card is going to Hannah Fox. The second gift card is going to Rory Abel. And our grand prize gift card / Hell's 100 swag bag is going to Candy Barnett. So thank you all for joining us. Dennis, again, thank you for moderating. EK, Stuart, Kit, you're wonderful. We're so happy to celebrate the spooky season with you. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, everybody. That was great. And happy Halloween, however you celebrate it this year. Sorry, we've over-Americanized it. Reclaim it. Take it back and send it back to us pure somehow.